A good number of you have been sending your glitch stories into me lately, and for that I want to say thank you. So if you have a story you would like to send my way and have featured in a video like this, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I've been a long-time listener to glitch stories over multiple podcasts, and I've always enjoyed them. They're definitely my favorite type of paranormal-like stories. I have one event that I'm pretty certain was a glitch, but it's something that has bothered me ever since it happened. The story actually begins with my childhood best friend, whom I'll call Sasha for the sake of privacy. Sasha and I grew up in the same neighborhood, and we were absolutely inseparable from the day that we met in kindergarten up to the day that she moved just before freshman year. We shared countless memories. The main and most important one to this story is when she turned 12. On her 12th birthday, her dad had bought her an acoustic guitar, because she claimed that she wanted to learn how to play it. After that day, Sasha had spent hours each week learning how to play it. And between then and the day that they moved away, she had learned how to play it really well. She was absolutely talented, to the point that she could listen to a song a couple of times and could easily start strumming the notes of the song or tell what tuning the song was in. Basically, she was on her way to become a guitar prodigy. The next year, I had actually gotten a little drum set that was basically a single snare, a bass drum, and a cymbal, and I sucked at it. But we had plans to start a band someday. And I even remember the band's name. We were going to call ourselves Blue Rock, because it sounded cool to our young brains. Then, just before freshman year, her dad ended up getting a job offer out of state, and they ended up having to move to another state. We promised that we would always be friends and that we would keep in touch, but, of course, as things go, we ended up losing touch. Fast forward to about a year ago, I was sitting on Facebook and thinking about some old friends that I had lost communications with, and Sasha's name came to mind. I went and searched for her, and I did find her. Her account was private, but I knew that face anywhere, so I immediately sent her a friend request. When she accepted, I went over and started scrolling to see what she had been doing with her life. And I was sad to see that there were no mentions of her musical talent, no mentions or videos of her with a guitar. Instead, she seemed to have a bunch of photos of paintings and food. I figured that she may have just shifted interests as she grew up. It's a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. I sent her a message and thought that I would be funny. I said, "Hey, now that we're connected again, do you want to go ahead and get Blue Rock going?" With a laughing emoji. She sent me a question mark and asked what Blue Rock was. I was heartbroken. She had completely forgotten our musical plans. I mentioned that it was our band that we were going to start, and that she was going to sing and play guitar, and that I was going to play the drums, and we were going to take over the world from our small town in Idaho. She mentioned that she had no idea what I was talking about. I sent a sad face but moved on, saying, "Oh well, do you still play guitar at least?" And once again, she had no idea what I meant. According to Sasha, she has literally never played guitar. Ever. She never got a guitar for her birthday, she and I never made plans to start a band, and she wasn't a guitar prodigy. I was beyond confused. These were core memories for me. Sasha was basically my only friend from the time I was 5 to when she moved. So there's no way that I confused her with another friend. I remember listening to her playing Sweet Child of Mine on her guitar because I was amazed at the fact that she figured it out. I remember spending the night at her place and us writing lyrics for these cringy songs about how much we loved the rain and other stupid preteen things. All of these things are things that I can recall in pure and clean detail. But according to Sasha, they never happened. We've spoken on the phone and even met up once when she came to town to visit her parents, and I actually went with her to see them, and they didn't remember ever getting her a guitar either. In fact, her dad mentioned that they had actually gotten her a camera for her 12th birthday because she wanted to be a photographer. So, unfortunately, my Sasha is gone. And while I do adore this new Sasha, and she's definitely similar to my old best friend, I'm still very confused as to where the Sasha that played guitar went. She was so talented. She was such a lovely person, and the fact that she is gone is depressing. Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this? I'm certain that it's not just a false memory. There's no way that I made all of this up in my head, as there are so many things I recall, but of course, I don't have any proof. Nor can I seem to find any photos or anything with Sasha holding a guitar. I hope that my original Sasha does still exist in her timeline, and that she's out there making beautiful music for the world. And hopefully the me in her timeline is a bit better at the drums. Hi, Raven. The events that I'm about to share happened this week, and the first thing I thought of when they happened was that I had to submit this to you. I'm leaving this in the story as I narrate this because I want to personally say thank you. So, thank you, Freydea810. Anyways, my fiancé and I live together with his little brother. We have the master bedroom and owned side of the house, and his brother has his own area across the house. My fiancé and his brother work and run a business together. There are 2 sets of keys for the house. My fiancé and I share a set of keys, and his brother has his own. So when they leave for work in the morning, my fiancé leaves our set of keys with me for when I leave, and they both share his brother's keys to get back in at the end of the day. My fiancé and I can read each other's body language super well. Oftentimes, for certain things, we will just use brief, easy gestures and know what's going on. Well, when my fiancé leaves for work each morning, he simply nods at me and then places our set of keys either on his bedside table or inside the top drawer of our dresser, so that I see where he's putting them. The other morning, he did his usual nod as he was telling me he loved me, placed the keys on his bedside table, gave me a kiss, and left. I laid down, watched some TV, and roughly 20 minutes after he left, I decided to order some coffee on DoorDash. After I purchased and completed my order, I looked over at his bedside table to grab them so that I would have them when my coffee arrived. But they weren't there. Each of our individual bedside tables are always clean and never have much on them other than a water bottle, occasionally a pair of earbuds and our glasses. So the keys would be pretty impossible to miss. I checked his bedside drawers in case they fell, still no keys. I then checked the entire bed, thinking that perhaps I falsely remembered him putting them on the bedside table, and he had left them on the bed. I shook out the sheets, checked under the pillows, checked under where I was sitting, and no keys in sight. I then thought that maybe he had actually left the keys inside the dresser today and that my memory was foggy because I hadn't had my coffee yet. And, feeling lazy, decided I would just grab them from the dresser when my coffee arrived. Because they had to be in there. We don't leave the keys anywhere else other than the 2 places I stated. Another 30 minutes or so go by and I get the notification that my coffee is finally ready. Right before I get up to go to the dresser, I instantly and very suddenly feel something sharp under my left butt cheek. I thought, it can't be. I reach down and right there in my hand are the keys. What freaks me out the most is not the fact that I literally checked the whole bed and that they weren't there, but the fact that I literally felt them materialize out of thin air underneath me. It felt as if there was a force quickly pushing them into existence and into my skin. I was also wearing shorts. I would have felt them digging into my skin. Well, I took the keys, and I went to get my coffee and went about with my day. I made a mental note to tell my fiancé about this, but had forgotten up until almost the same event happened to him last night, and this time we were in bed together. I had gotten my fiancé a pair of great earbuds a few months ago, and he usually keeps them either on his bedside table or in the top drawer of it. Well, yesterday, he was doing work on his laptop and using the earbuds. He had the earbuds case on the bed. At one point during his work time, I distracted him a little bit from work and he quickly put his earbuds back in the case, tossed them aside on the bed, and we had our time. After getting dressed, we realized that his earbuds were missing and had obviously gotten lost in our bed. We tore apart the bed for about 15 minutes, and they weren't there. Literally all of the bedding was on the floor by this point, and we had shaken out everything. No earbuds case. We checked the floor, the bedside tables, and the dresser to see if he had accidentally misplaced them. No earbuds. He stated, "Well, I guess a ghost took them." We both went on to cook dinner and enjoy the night. Skip forward a few hours, we're laying in bed cuddling, when he suddenly feels something. He reaches down under his butt, and he pulls out from under him the missing earbuds. He looked so confused, and said that he felt like they had just kind of materialized underneath him. He said that he felt a weird sudden pressure and then instantly felt them under his butt. We'd been rolling around as well, and we would have felt and seen something underneath us. I froze, and then I remembered to tell him what had happened to me the other day with the keys. He listened with a surprised expression. Whilst telling him, I also remembered that during our time, I looked towards the window and in the reflection saw a black shadow quickly dart across and completely block the light in the hallway area of our room that leads to our bathroom. It was brief, and I brushed it off as him, but as I keep playing it in my head over and over, the same memory goes. The shadow darted across before he began climbing on top of me, so it wasn't him. This happened shortly after he had tossed the earbuds onto the bed, coincidentally, shortly before they went missing. We also see repeating angel numbers on an excessive amount of times every single day. I'm very susceptible to the paranormal, and I know that our house isn't haunted. I don't feel it, and I don't feel any external presences. I never have. About an hour before the earbuds materialized underneath him, my fiancé also claimed to have seen a warm, friendly face in the kitchen from the corner of his eyes, but he brushed it off as nothing. It was concluded that these incidences happened in the exact same spot. Both of these items had gone missing without a trace, and then had materialized back under us in the exact same spot on the bed, without explanation. Could there be a portal or glitch in that particular spot? Is it possible we have angels or spirits helping us out? Could it be us moving or walking around in a parallel universe or reality that somehow briefly brushed against this one? We might not ever know. And while I know my fiancé has likely already forgotten about it by now, it's very heavy on my mind and I know that it will continue to be. Whatever it is, I'm not scared of it. Despite the shadow being dark, to me it almost feels not like a spirit, but rather a friendly, warm, mysterious force trying to help. It feels like a warm force that's smiling upon us, reaching out a hand, giving a little nudge of help when we need it. It feels like it briefly took these items from us to perhaps prevent something else bad from happening, like a butterfly effect thing, and then gave them back at the right time. I have a story that happened to me about 8 months ago that I wanted to share, but I needed to get some information from my sister first to make sure that I remembered the whole thing correctly, since she was kind of there for the event too. Plus, since it involves her very young son, I wanted to make sure that she was okay with me sharing it. She was, so here we go. 8 months ago, I was going through a really rough patch with my boyfriend. We'd been having a lot of disagreements about random little things over a time frame of about 2 weeks. They were things that really shouldn't have bothered either of us. You know how when things in a relationship start to go south, they just keep going south until something as simple as a dirty glass on the counter can turn into a shouting match? Yeah, that's where we were. I had actually left and told him that I was going to spend a couple of days at my sister's house to try and get my head together, which is why I was there. As mentioned, my sister has a young son named Danny, who had just turned 6 at the time. Danny is a quiet and observant child, often watching others with intensity that's a bit unusual for his age, but he is adorable and I love him. I don't personally want kids, but I would take a bullet for Danny, and he would probably then ask me why I did it because that's who he is. He likes information. That said, I was making it a point to not mention what was going on between myself and my boyfriend around him, because Danny and my boyfriend were super close too, and I didn't want to upset him, just in case we didn't end up breaking up. During my first night there, I was in the kitchen doing the dishes after dinner, just trying to pull my weight and be helpful since my sister was letting me stay there, and I started thinking about my boyfriend and the last argument that we'd had. It was a dumb argument about money, because he wanted to buy something that I didn't think was important, but he wanted it because it was something he liked. It wasn't expensive, it was just unnecessary. I was sitting there and thinking about whether or not I overreacted. As I was sitting there lost in thought, Danny walked into the kitchen. He walked straight over to me and, without prompting, said, "He understands. You need to call him and tell him that you're sorry, and he'll apologize too." I was a bit taken aback as I hadn't said anything about this disagreement to anyone, especially not around him. I was sitting there thinking that he was reading my mind, and as soon as I thought that, Danny kind of chuckled and said, "You're silly, Aunt Kay," and then took off back into the living room. Now, that was a bit terrifying because, at that point, it was like he was absolutely reading my mind. But I brushed it off thinking that maybe his statement was more general and he had heard my sister say something about us having an argument. So, maybe he was just telling me to apologize and that it'll be okay. I went ahead and finished the dishes and then went downstairs towards where the guest room was, and I pulled out my phone to see if my boyfriend had texted me or anything, but he hadn't. I was a bit upset about it, but then figured that he was taking the time to himself too, trying to figure some things out. I put my phone in my pocket, and as soon as I turned to go back upstairs, I ran straight into Danny, who was standing on the steps and just watching me. I jumped slightly, and then laughed, saying that he had scared me. He didn't even respond to that. He just stared at me straight in the face and said, "He's not mad at you." I chuckled a bit, and said thanks for reassuring me, and sort of glanced down at the floor. At this point, I thought that I should maybe ask Danny for advice, considering he seemed to know everything already, and maybe I could use the innocence of a child's mind to get a better perspective. I actually asked him, "Well, since you seem to know so much about things, what do you think is going on with us?" I swear, when I asked this, Danny puffed up his chest and focused really hard on me like he was reading the cosmos for information. After a few moments, he pauses, smiles, and then says, "He's getting a better job, but he's scared that it's going to be hard." I kind of stared at him confused. I hadn't heard anything about a new job or anything like that, and none of us had mentioned it at all. I leaned against the wall and pulled out my phone, staring straight at Danny, and said, "Well, let's see if you're right, kiddo." I won't get into the whole conversation that we had, but I will say that Danny was right. I called my boyfriend and asked if we could talk, and he agreed. I then asked him what it was that was stressing him out so much, and at first he wouldn't tell me, but after a bit of prodding, he finally did. He told me that over the past couple of weeks, he had been up for review by his manager, and his manager was trying to get him into a new position. A position with the company that was a major promotion, that came with a major increase in salary, but also added a bit of travel to his duties. He mentioned that he was stressed about it because he wanted to tell me, but he thought that I would get upset about the traveling part, and it had been causing him a lot of mental stress. After this, I thanked Danny, but told him that I needed to finish the conversation in my bedroom. He turned and walked away, but finished off with, "Let him know that he got it, they just have to give him the paper." I nodded and he walked away. We talked about things for about an hour or two. We were both super apologetic and realized that we were both causing unnecessary problems. Wrapping up a long story here, my boyfriend did get the job. His boss was just waiting for the letter from HR to give him the formal offer. My boyfriend was stressed about the new job prospect, and he was letting it get to him, and it was rubbing off on me, so we were fighting a lot. When we spoke, we both apologized, and it was a good thing that we spoke, because we were able to air out a lot of issues. In the end, Danny was 100% correct on all fronts, on things that he could not have known about. I talked to my sister about everything, and she assured me that she hadn't spoken to Danny about my boyfriend for the same reason that I hadn't. She didn't want to upset him. Plus, I don't think that she'd had my boyfriend's number, so there's no way that my sister could have gotten that information from him and passed it on to Danny to get me to call him like that. I firmly believe that this was all Danny. That Danny was somehow able to see something in the situation that we weren't seeing. He was able to know what I was thinking, and he knew the solution. I have no idea if Danny was psychic, or if he had some sort of connection to the Matrix, but I'm chalking this up to a glitch of some sort. To Danny having access to information that we don't. I guess it's possible that there was some kind of coordination that I wasn't aware of, but I honestly do not think so. Danny hasn't done anything else crazy like this since, so it may have just been some kind of temporary ability or insight. Thankfully, nothing else out of the ordinary has happened, but I honestly cannot help but wonder if there's more to Danny than meets the eye. At the time of this submission, this is something that happened yesterday afternoon. There are probably plenty of reasonable explanations, but I've been listening to this podcast for the past month or so, and my mind immediately went to glitch when this happened. I play recreational ice hockey, and every time I get home from a game, I take my gear out of my bag and lay it on the floor to dry. I've always put everything in the exact same spot every single time, and have been doing so for years. So, the chances of me misplacing something are pretty slim. One part of gear that I always lay out to dry are my padded wrist guards. Think tennis sweatbands with some foam and plastic padding on the top to protect from slashes. They're black, with a white logo and easy to see on my light floors. I played in a game on Monday night and then came home and set all of my gear out as usual. The next day, Tuesday, I went to pack everything back into my bag. However, my wrist guards had completely disappeared. I moved my bag around a little and looked in all of the pockets, and they were nowhere to be found. I was so convinced that I lost them that I actually texted a teammate/friend to say that I may have left them in the locker room. Fast forward to the next day, Wednesday, and I was removing a handful of jerseys from the hangers in the utility closet that's right next to my bag, so that I could access the AC filter the next day. I threw them all on top of my bag, looked around on the floor, and still no wrist guards. Fast forward another day, Thursday. I get home from work and am standing at my kitchen sink, which is to the immediate right of where I keep all of my hockey gear. I look over, and laying on the floor in the exact spot where I would have put them 3 days prior are my wrist guards, clear as day. I was incredibly confused. I would not have missed these in the several times I was around my bag in the past couple of days. It's truly like they disappeared, and then came back a few days later. There is probably a more reasonable explanation for this, but none of them really make sense, as I did absolutely nothing different when unpacking my gear. This was my first experience with something like this, and I'm curious to know if it'll be my last. I have a weird and hopefully short glitch that I wanted to share, as it's something that really, really bothered me when it happened. And it's honestly causing me a bit of mental anguish to this day. I'm going to try to make this quick, but I can't make any promises. I do have issues with talking too much. Sorry. In order to really get a good sense of what happened, though, I do have to give a bit of setup and context. And that's probably where this will get to be a longer story. So, this occurred about a year ago, around summertime. Last year, I finally finished my degree, and as such, it was going to be the first summer of freedom that I'd had for a long time. I went straight from high school to college, so while I had summer vacations then, I had spent the last 4 years having no more than a couple of weeks to myself between quarters. Because of the fact that my time off was so minimal, between working a full-time job and having classes, I haven't had much of a social life. I promised myself that, when I graduated, I would drive back home and spend a week with my friends and family. I finished my degree, graduated, and made sure that I had the time all scheduled off work, and then did exactly that. The glitch itself is one that's weird, and part of me wants to think that it is something to do with my memory, but I'm 99% certain that it's not. When I got to my parents' house, everything was wrong. I don't just mean that it felt weird, I mean that everything inside the house was not how I remembered it at all. Now, mind you, some people may say that it had just been a while since I'd been there, so I forgot how it looked. But I spent 18 years in this house, and I was there for a day or two less than a year prior, and it all seemed right back then. So here's the boring part of the story. I have to explain what I remember and what it is now. I'll try to do so without getting too deep. Here's what I remember. The front door would open into the living room, there was a dining room just past that, and the kitchen to the left. There was also one bedroom downstairs with a full bath next to it, all to the right of everything else. And upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms and a half bath. However, now, somehow, this map is all incorrect. The front door opens into a hallway and the stairs are right there. The dining room is seemingly on the other side of the kitchen, and there is now a full bathroom, and the room that I thought was a bedroom is now more of a sunroom. Like, it has a lot of windows, but it's hardwood, and not suited for a bed. Upstairs is even more confusing, because there are still 2 bedrooms, but what I remember is that there were 2 rooms and then the half bath. But now, it's 1 room, half bath, 2nd room. There's also a window upstairs that was definitely not there. I remember that hallway always being super dark if you had the lights off at all times. Now, it's well lit with a window that faces east. What's even weirder, my parents have 2 kids. Myself and my younger brother. Why would there only have been 1 extra bedroom? I don't remember us sharing rooms, and I haven't asked him because we're not on the best terms, but I feel like I would recall spending my childhood sharing a bedroom with him. When I walked into that house, I felt so lost. Like I literally had no idea where things were in my childhood home. I actually asked my mom how they had renovated and changed so much, but she kind of just stared at me and said, "We didn't change anything. What are you talking about?" And I really don't think that she was messing with me because, based on what changed, they would have had to have damn near rebuilt the entire house, and they don't have that kind of money. They both were acting like it has always been like this. My mom has pictures from when I was a kid that show the stairs and the hallways like they are now. And from what I can tell, everything is pointing to this being the house that I grew up in. They haven't moved, it's the same number and street name. So, I guess now my childhood home is nothing like what I recall. Again, I want to say that maybe this is a memory issue or there's something wrong with me, but I'm perfectly healthy. And I find it hard to believe that I would just forget how a house looked that I spent most of my life in and visited just a year prior. As it is, I'm chalking this up to a glitch in the Matrix and calling it a day, so hopefully you find this interesting enough to share with your audience, because it's messed me up pretty badly. To start, obligatory long-time listener, first-time caller, and I'm not on any illicit drugs nor alcohol, nor am I mentally unstable. I know that this could all probably be implied through the story that I'm submitting, but I also know that people could try to tell me that I was hallucinating due to something like this. So, I wanted to get ahead of it. This isn't too crazy of a story, but it was weird. And it was one of those things that really got to me when it happened. So, I thought I would go ahead and share it, and if anyone enjoys it, then it did its job. This was a few weeks ago. I was driving home from work, and, as always, I ended up stuck in stop-and-go traffic on the highway as I was always leaving dead in the middle of rush hour. There is a stretch of highway that always backs up, because it has a merger from another highway and it's a total pain. The sun was setting, it was shining in from behind me, thankfully, and the weather was actually pretty nice. I was sitting there, waiting for things to speed up, when I looked over to my left and saw a bright red car pulling up beside me. The car caught my attention, because it was pretty clearly a vintage model, though I couldn't tell you what it was as I'm not much of a car enthusiast. That said, this car was gorgeous. Cherry red, top-down convertible, absolutely pristine condition, and I really couldn't help but admire it as it pulled up beside me. It wasn't like I was going anywhere anytime soon, so I had a moment or two to soak it up. As it pulled up, I got a good look at the driver, an older man with aviator sunglasses and a baseball cap with some sports team on it. I looked over, he looked over at me, he gave a nod, and I gave a thumbs up so as to say, "Damn, that's a nice car." For a few minutes, we were side by side. I kept glancing over, thinking about how nice of a car it was, how much I would be scared to take it out into rush hour traffic like this, thinking of the possibility of some idiot not paying attention to the road coming along and just completely destroying it. But then, something happened. I glanced down at my clock to check the time. I noted how long traffic was taking, and then I went to look back, and the car was gone. It had completely vanished without a trace. To cut out some of the quote-unquote logical explanations that may get thrown my way, there is no way that this car sped off ahead of me out of sight, as traffic wasn't moving. He couldn't have changed lanes and gotten ahead or behind me, as I kind of checked all around and he was nowhere. Not to mention the fact that he was in the leftmost lane, and I was in the center of this 3-lane highway. Where the red car was, there was now a white or silverish Camry with a younger woman driving it. But the car that was in front of where he was the same car. There's no way that he got over to the shoulder to gun it ahead of all of us, as this section of the highway doesn't really have a left-hand shoulder. And I can't imagine he would have risked destroying that car by doing that. Plus, I'm pretty sure that I would have seen him do so when I looked back over, as the time between glancing at the clock and back up was less than a second. Obviously, I was confused, and a bit upset. Somehow this car had just straight up disappeared from right next to me. I spent the rest of the drive home thinking about it, and it actually bothered me. I've heard of disappearing object phenomenon, but a whole car, driver included, just vanishing like that in rush hour traffic on the highway? It was definitely bizarre, to say the least. And after thinking about it way too long, the only explanation I can come up with is that he either defied the laws of reality and teleported out of traffic, or this was a legitimate glitch. If it was the former, well, then I hope to meet that guy again so that I can learn about this new technology. But if it's the latter, well, I hope he's out there in the Matrix living his best life. I grew up on a street with the houses across from me having their backyards butted up against a cemetery. One of my friends and his older brother, who is the same age as my older brother, lived on that side. At the end of our street was one of the entries to the cemetery. We regularly rode our bikes there. There were a number of ponds to skip stones in or catch frogs. Plus, the bike riding was awesome because it was dirt paths and never busy. The 4 of us and another neighbor were biking one day after school, and we were hitting pretty low hills to do tricks. Nothing crazy, but the friend my age had a bad fall. His leg was really bad, and we all thought it was broke. His brother and the other boys stayed, and I rode my bike back to his house to get his mom. I knocked on the door and anxiously told her how bad he was hurt. She was confused and said that he was home. He walked toward the door like no big deal. I was frozen. I took my time going back to the cemetery to meet up with everyone else. No one was there anymore. I went home to see what happened to my brother, and he was just eating snacks laying on the couch and watching TV. I asked where he went, and he said that he hadn't left the house yet, and that he'd just been hanging out. Before I knew of glitches, I thought maybe my friend was saved from this by a guardian angel, and I had just witnessed the outcome of it and no one else did. But Now, I believe this to have been a glitch. Alright, my friends. That was this week's collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. Most of these, maybe all of them, I'm not really sure, were submitted to me, and those are always fun videos because, for the most part, these will all be new stories to most of you. A lot of you pointed that out last week, that a lot of the times I do stories that a lot of you haven't heard. Well, that comes from the fact that I've built this amazing audience, and whenever somebody experiences a glitch in the Matrix and they start to research glitches in the Matrix because of what they experienced, they may very well end up on this channel. Not to brag, but I know I rank pretty high on YouTube for Glitch in the Matrix, so it's not unheard of or unlikely that it would happen. And yeah, starting my videos off by saying, hey, if you've ever experienced this, please send it my way, has done a huge service for this channel, in that people have submitted me a lot of stories. These were mostly, if not all, submitted, and next week I have a ton more submitted ones. I actually haven't had to send a request out on Reddit for a little while, so thank you to all of you who send your stories my way, or let me use your stories in any way, shape, or form. Y'all are amazing, so yeah. Anyways, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. I know you're wanting me to speed through this to get to the end here. Thumbs up button if you're new, subscribe if you liked it. If not, well, then don't subscribe. You won't like what I make anyways, so yeah. You can also do super thanks, which is a tip to the channel. Always appreciate it. I try to respond to those ASAP. YouTube does not notify on those very well, so sorry if I ever miss them. Patreon, channel memberships, never expected, always appreciated, such and such and such and so forth. Anyways, let's move on to another topic. Let's talk about last week's word of the week. Now, last week, I made a comment saying, hey, it's X, and I'm not going to give you a specific word, just use the letter X in your comment, and I'll include it. Some of you? Some of you made me regret my decisions. And on the screen right now is a collection of all 42 comments that I got, including the letter X. They may be hard to read, and I apologize. It's hard to fit 42 comments on the screen whenever some people, not gonna mention any names, ghost of a day in person, leave comments that take up a significant portion of the screen, because they include almost every word that starts with the letter X that exists. Regardless, thank you to each and every single one of you for sending your comments with the letter X on the screen now, as mentioned. Y'all are amazing. And, sorry, y'all are excellent. I appreciate every single one of you, even those that make this very complicated. Thank you, honestly. Now, let's move on to this week's word of the week. This week, we shall yearn for a better word. If you're clever like I am not, you'll know the word is yearn. Y-E-A-R-N. That's earn with a Y at the beginning. It means to have strong, often sad longing, to feel deep pity, sympathy, or tenderness, or to have an intense desire or longing for something, such as, we shall yearn for better words of the week in the future, and I shall do my best to supply them. That said, friends, let's move on to the end of this video. Remember, you are loved, you are important, you are valid. Never let anyone tell you otherwise, and never forget it. And of course, until I see you again, my friends, much love, and sleep well.